Spider-Man for the PlayStation 1 is a PlayStation 1 game released in the UK 1,653 days before the 2005 revival of the hit British sci-fi Doctor Who. Spider-Man the hero is awesome, and Spider-Man the game is, well, it's complicated. Announced in December 1998, the game was developed by Neversoft and published by Activision. It used the same engine as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but for some reason it won't let you do any gnarly grinds on Stark Industries building. Levels break down into 4 types: escape the place, complete the objective, boss fights, and set pieces. Both the escape the place and complete the objectives type of levels are pretty similar. You do a few puzzles, you beat up a few enemies, you swing and climb, you do the overall Spider-Man stuff. As the song goes, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can do within the limits of a PlayStation 1 game. Emphasis on within the limits of a PlayStation 1 game. Swinging around the place isn't like Insomniac Spider-Man with all that beautiful momentum. You hold R2 and you basically glide forward similar to the LEGO Marvel Superheroes games. You gotta be careful though, because each use of your web uses up your web fluid, whether that be swinging, zipping, shooting, boxing, shielding, or whatever you want to use. It all uses your web fluid, and if you run out, you go and get a capsule to fill up. The set pieces are quite good as well. I hate the skyscraper level. I find it annoying, I find it irritating, I find it... ugh. But I have to say, I remember being really impressed when I first played it over 2 decades ago. And even now, it is, it's quite good. The part where you're swinging from one side of an electrified room to the other, whilst dodging lasers, is also quite good, if not annoying. In fact, all the set pieces can be described as impressive but annoying, to be fair. They just add nice variety to the whole shebang. I also want to point out that I only find them annoying because I am bad at video games. The boss fights are great, each one brings something new to the mix. Scorpion's fight requires you to protect J. Jonah Jameson whilst fighting him. Rhino requires you to use your environment against him, something that'll carry on to future games. Venom requires you juggle fighting Venom and stopping a water tank from filling and drowning MJ. Doc Ock requires you block yourself in, creating less room to dodge in order to drain the shields, protecting him. Carnage requires you to lure him into a sonic bubble, which also damages you. Monster Rock is the only case of a good running towards a camera level. And Mysterio is a The gameplay is repetitive, but because of the way it's broken up, they do a good job at making it feel less repetitive than it actually is. The fighting is just button mashing a lot of the time, so that doesn't really hold up too well. Although you do get abilities such as a web yank, web shield, and web boxing gloves. The swinging also doesn't hold up very well. I mean, I know it's in the limitations of PlayStation 1 game, but this series is called Does It Hold Up, not Was It Good Back Then? But overall the gameplay is fun, and at the end of the day that's the most important thing about these escapist media. Before I tell you about the story, I want to be a bit of a geek and point out how interesting the format is. What you would call the main story is more of a framing device to tell these smaller stories that are really just excuses for set pieces and boss fights. Similar to being individual issues in a comic book run that has an overall arc to things. It feels quite Golden Age in a way, from Stan Lee's narration to the over-the-top premise. It's enough to keep your interest while playing, but not enough to be memorable for more than a few days after. Overall, I wouldn't say the story holds up too well, but you do get to team up with Goofy Venom, so that's cool. The music is great, especially the main menu theme. It's weird, it's strange, it pays homage to the classic 60s theme. Overall, just a ton of fun. The other songs all have their own charm to them and have that early 2000s vibe that haven't been replicated since. The music was composed by Howard Uriarte and... Tommy Tallarico? The man who worked on video game masterpiece Roblox, Tommy Tallarico? The ex-CEO that brought in television entertainment into the new age of consoles, Tommy Tallarico? MTV Cribs alumni, Tommy Tallarico? The guy behind a completely ethical concert that doesn't take any advantage of students' video games live, Tommy Tallarico? Well, that was a strange revelation. Apparently he also works on the sound design, which, although not realistic, has this really charming cartoonish sound to most of it. A bit like the sort of sound effects you would hear in a 1990s cartoon. My beloved 1990s cartoon. They wouldn't hold up if this was an attempt at a realistic portrayal like Insomniac Spider-Man, but since it's obvious they're taking from the cartoons and the comics, it holds up well for the tone they're going for. That Spider Sense sound effect would probably be the sound I would associate with Spider Sense if it wasn't for the animated series. The art design is great as well. Everything is colourful and welcoming like a comic book, whilst being dark and eerie when it needs to be. If the graphics were better, it'd feel like you'd stepped into the pages of a comic book, but this is a PlayStation 1 game, so even though it may not feel that way, it still feels good overall. The definition of the muscles and the creases on the suit is a detail that wasn't necessarily expected, but was nice. There are parts in the sewer level that show water damage, posters and advertisements add flavour to the world. It's just brimming with details that are not necessary in a PlayStation 1 game. That makes the world feel brimming with life. And since I suppose I've accidentally moved on to talking about atmosphere, let's talk about the cameos. Johnny Storm, Punisher, Daredevil, Captain America, they all make it feel like you're in a wider Marvel universe. And in the What If mode, which I'll talk about later, you even get to see Namor, Ghost Rider and Silver Surfer. And while we talk about characters, Rino Romano is spectacular as Spider-Man. Jennifer Hale reprises her role as Black Cat, and let's face it, I don't even need to comment on her performance, you know she aces it every time. Darren Norris plays Venom, the same Darren Norris who plays Cosmo in Fairly Odd Parents, and honestly, you wouldn't know it was him if it wasn't for the credits. The cast sound very theatrical, which fits the game well, similar to the sound effects, but wouldn't really stand up if it was meant to be a realistic portrayal. Okay, ease of access part of the video now, and I have to say that the game is abundant and very easy to emulate once you learn how to rip the disc. Your Honour, I know my game was emulated, but as you can see, it's not illegal according to the British High Court, as long as you own the game itself, and I also mentioned ripping the disc in the retrospective review, so I took reasonable steps to make sure that those viewing this video were following the rule of the law, and I have no liability if some stray rebels break the law regarding downloading a game that's not available to buy from a first-party start-by company that no longer exists. I rest my case. Controls-wise, they're bearable, but occasionally they do feel a bit unresponsive and the camera is just the worst. Overall, the game holds up well. It's fun to play and short enough to avoid overstaying its welcome. If you do fancy playing some more, then there is a plethora of costumes to unlock, some of which give you special abilities for future playthroughs, and there is also a special What If mode if you enter the code. I recommend you go back and play it if you want the nostalgia hit, because it is worth it. 安らぎ捨てて全てを捨てて悪を追って空かける